Welcome to the Putting Couch, another episode of Seymour's video podcast. And we today are going to conclude our three-part series with Dr. Bob Winters, one of the great sports psychologists in the world, who focuses in on sports performance and particularly in golf. And today, since Seymour Putter Company loves to talk about all things putting, we're going to continue with Dr. Bob's insights and tremendous research that he's done to helping golfers putt their best. And we've learned in these first two episodes that there are so many things that Dr. Bob's years and years and years of study have distilled down to really some very simple ideas that when we listen to them, they make so much sense, and I know will help all of us putt better. Obviously, if you want to pursue these thoughts further, there's so much research out there from Dr. Bob Winters. And Doctor, we just really appreciate having you part of Team Seymour at Seymour Putter Company. One of the great things that one of the reasons we love to talk about putting is because we do think we build a better putter with riflescope technology. You hide the red dot, and so many things all of a sudden get better and allow you to move from the technical to the art of putting and the performance of putting and the mental side of putting. Because with riflescope technology, we're going to take variables out of play that so many golfers just get stuck on. And so that's why you will putt your best with the Seymour putter. And we want to talk to you about that. But today, we really want to talk about the second part of this template, these 10 commandments that came down to you on how to putt your best. We heard the first 5 and we were struck by the simplicity, but also by the impact that these first 5 commandments had. And Doc, you can review really quickly what we talked about with the first 5, and I cannot wait to get to number 6 to 10 today. So Doc, welcome back.
Well, it's great to present the second, half, the second, tablet of the 10 commandments of great mental putting to you, Jim, and to Ted. And it's great to be here. Speaking of, keeping things simple, I've always, applied that, to my sports psychology practice. We talked about the KISS philosophy. And a lot of people used to say that was keep it simple, stupid. But I've never worked with stupid people. I've always loved that acronym, though. I like to keep it simple and specific. And the great thing about Seymour is that it's a very simple riflescope technology. It's a great putter. So I like the KISS. I like to keep it super and Seymour. So if you want to putt super, you just putt with the Seymour. So, that's great. Well, we're going to continue with, the second half of the 10 commandments, but the first, 5, let's go over and do a quick review. Number 1 was every putt, no matter the distance, can be made. Every putt you step into, you have to believe, no matter the distance, it can be made. Number 2, every putt deserves to be made. Full purpose, commitment, and intention with every putt. Then, rule number 3, begin every putt with the end in mind. Really, starting off your look by seeing, what's going to happen with that ball going into the hole. Number 4 is being decisive. Decisive is your conduit to creating putting confidence. Being decisive eliminates doubt. And number 5, well, any putt, it's just a putt. A putt is a putt is a putt. Doesn't matter if it's for par, bogey, birdie. You know what it is. Quit labeling it, but it's still just the distance. It's the physical execution of the putt that we need to talk about. So now as we move to commandment number 6, all right?
And it's funny, real quick on number 5, what I think about is the fact that, half the putts that we miss, it seems like we miss because we're not taking it seriously enough. We're thinking about something else, and for some reason something hasn't clicked, and so we're not giving it its due, and so we miss it. And then the other half of the time we give it more than its due, and it's, again, neither time do we go in with the approach that it's just a putt. It's either for some reason not big enough in our mind, or it's too big in our mind and we miss it. And you're saying there's a sweet spot in the middle. It's a putt.
Yeah, let's talk about that then. That's a great point that you bring up for all of our viewers and listeners. So if we remember Goldilocks and the Three Bears, if we can kind of take our putting back, to little fairy tales and little night stories that we tell our children. So you had Goldilocks who goes, into the woods, and she stumbles upon the bear's house, and the bears have left, to actually let their porridge, which is soup, cool. So there was one porridge that was very hot, one porridge that was very cold, and one porridge that was just right. So what does that mean as far as putting? For many people who have this apathetic, wandering mind, I don't care, that's sort of cold porridge. They're careless. They have a careless attitude. And they could care less. I don't care if I make it or miss it. And they just sort of go through the motions, all right? Now, when you get to the porridge that's way too hot, no, that's people being very careful. They care so much. They want it so bad. They're trying so hard that they get angry, when the putt doesn't go in because they're really just trying, so hard, or they have so much anxiety and so much, what we call emotional discomfort. And they just go, I just don't want to look bad. So that's careful putting. So on one side, you've got the cold porridge, which is careless. The other side is the hot porridge, which is careful. And then you come to the baby bear, where, that porridge is just right. So what, is that as far as, confidence? That is putting carefree. You care and you have, specific intention of what you do, but you are free to actually putt and let your natural and developed athletic talent take over. And that's the whole point. We need to, understand that a putt is a putt is a putt. But you have to be free and you have to give yourself sort of this childlike innocence to step in and just go, hey, it's got to go somewhere. It might as well go to where I want it to go. And that's really, what, putting with a childlike, carefree, confident mindset is. And that's why we're saying, listen, until you can putt carefree, you're always going to have lackluster or, inferior putting.
Fantastic.
So that's number 5.
Thank you for wrapping that up.
Fairy tale, version of sports psychology by Dr. Bob Winters. Okay.
I love
and that's
it.
our bedtime story for, today. All right. So let's go into number 6. This is really inspired by Jack Nicklaus because he says, so many times over his career that every shot he stepped into, he sees this Hollywood spectacular. All right. He sees the shot. He sees exactly the fly of the ball. He sees it going in. And he's done this, for years, on the putting green. So commandment number 6 is that every putt is made in the mind long before the stroke is executed. So we see it, we feel it, we anticipate it. This is really what we want to see. This is positive visualization. This is very specific neuromuscular programming. So you see that, every putt, I'm making it in my mind before I step in. So you are almost, I want to say not, expecting success, but expecting for you to stay in the process, to be in the moment and to be engaged, with this ball roll line and roll that ball right down, to the ball roll line and the ball goes into the hole. So if you could actually begin, to actually say, I've got this putt made in my mind as you go in and step into it. Which leads me to the story of the great golden bear. And I heard this story many years ago at the PGA show, and I was walking around and kind of happened to stumble upon, Phil Rogers, who, for a little while there was Jack Nicklaus's short game coach. When Jack needed some work on his wedge game and maybe a little bit on his putting. I mean, for years he had seen, the legendary Jack Grout. But, Phil Rogers was telling a story, and I just kind of happened to, walk in and, I introduced myself, and Phil said, hey, how you doing? And they were talking about Jack putting. And they were talking about, I believe it was the Canadian Open in 1975. And here were 2 great ambassadors of the McGregor Golf Company, Jack Nicklaus and Tom Weiskopf. Now, we got to go back a little bit. Jack Nicklaus was an Ohio State Buckeye. Oh, so was Tom Weiskopf. And Tom Weiskopf was going to be the next Arnold Palmer, the next beloved golfer. Tom Weiskopf, tremendous golfer, fantastic, just great, golf course, architect, designer, but an unbelievable talent. But you didn't know if it was going to be tempestuous Tommy or terrific Tom who showed up. I mean, he was just sort of sometimes very emotional. But on this day in the 1975 Canadian Open, Jack Nicklaus was playing head-to-head against Tom Weiskopf. And I think, Jack had about a 12-foot putt, as told by Phil Rogers. And I'm listening to this story, and Phil said Jack stepped up in that putt, goes into that, legendary Golden Bear crouch, and he actually hits the putt, and the putt goes into the center of the hole, goes down, and pops up, and it's on the other side of the hole. And you're sitting there going, "Ooh, it defied the law of gravity." Well, maybe Jack didn't study law at that time, right? But the point of it is, he goes in there and he's visibly, he's pretty perturbed. The bear, you poke the bear. He steps in, he taps it in. Weiskopf, who had that nice, Silver Scott Tommy Armour blade putter, knocked his 8-footer in. I think he went, maybe one up, or brought the match to even, because the match was going into a playoff, after this 18th hole. But as they approached, I think, the 18th tee, Tom Weiskopf, who, I guess he always wanted to beat Jack. That was one of his things. He really wanted to go head to head with Jack and beat Jack. I mean, maybe it's from the old Buckeye days, and maybe it was from the McGregor staff, or maybe it was just because Tom wanted to beat, the Golden Bear. Well, as they were walking to the tee, it was supposedly said that Tom Weiskopf sort of offers some olive branch to Jack and says, "Too bad you missed that putt, Jack." He goes, "It looked like you made it." And Jack snipped back really quickly. He goes, "Oh, I didn't miss that putt, Tom. I made that putt. It just didn't happen to stay in the hole." And I guess Weiskopf was going, "I'm just trying to give you a compliment here," right? And so the story goes on to 1995, and I think they're playing together in the, like the third round, and Jack has got a putt for about a 25-footer on, for birdie on the 18th hole there at Congressional Country Club. And Jack steps up there like he's normally done many times. He steps up there, knocks that putt in. And a lot of people who've never seen Jack Nicklaus play this, last couple of generations, Jack Nicklaus made more putts those final few holes coming down the stretch. We always talk about Tiger making a lot of putts, but it was Jack who really, set, the template for making putts coming down the stretch. He knocks it in. He goes in, I think he's one or two, behind Weiskopf, who goes on to win, the Open that year. So they're in the scorer's tent now. And Tom, thinks he's going to actually ask it, he's going to offer another olive branch to Jack. He goes, "Daggone you, Jack." He goes, "You just knew you were going to make that damn putt, didn't you?" And Jack looked at him. He goes, "No, Tom, I didn't know that I was going to make that putt, but I believed it was going in." And Tom's sitting there going, what in the world's going on here? I mean, I'm just trying to give him another compliment, right? And so, and years later, I became, one of the mental game consultants for Jack Nicklaus when he had his Golden Bear tour down to Southern Florida, myself and my other colleague, Dr. Patrick Cohn. And I remember we were at, a meeting, with some of the advisors and appreciation dinner. And I asked Jack, if that story was true. And he said, "Well, who told you that story?" And I said, "Phil Rogers." He goes, "Oh, well, I wish, he wouldn't tell that story." But the point was, he asked me, he says, "What do you think?" And I guess, the thing I thought was, I think I said, to Jack at the time, I said, "Well, the point being is, when you step into the putt and you hit the putt, you've done everything you possibly could to ensure that you're actually going to be successful in making that putt." And we hit a lot of great putts, and the putt, still doesn't go in. It hits the hole and stays out. Sometimes we hit a bad putt and it goes in. I mean, that's the variability of putting. I said, "But that's really what you felt. Every putt, you really believe is going to go in the hole." And I said, and you were just absolutely accurate there. You made that putt in your mind. It just didn't happen to have an objective result. It went in and came out. Gravity was defied. And I said, the other thing is, I said, when you're telling this story about, you and Weiskopf goes, "Guys, you say you believed it, you didn't know it. What's the difference?" I said, "There's sometimes we have a deja vu experience when we step into a putt. And we just know it's going in. And I'm sure all of our listeners and viewers know that. You just know it's going in. But there's sometimes when you don't have that deja vu experience, you have to sort of work yourself into this belief that you know it's going in. And so I finally, said that. I said, that's the whole point. I said, if you don't really know it's going in, you have to work yourself up into this putting fervor that says, this putt's going in. I believe it's going in. And I remember Jack looked at me, and this was a long time ago, and he may not even remember. He goes, you get it. I wonder why Tom doesn't get it. And I think I was saying to Jack, and I said, well, maybe that's why you've only won 18 majors and he's only won one, right? And Jack looked at me, he goes, that's a good point right there, right there. So, I mean, that's the whole point. But I love, that story. I mean, hey, I didn't make that putt, I mean, it didn't happen to stay in, but I made it in my mind.
I made it. Yeah.
I made
Yeah.
it in my mind. And that's
Yeah.
why number
Yeah.
6, every putt is made in the mind before the stroke is made. And as he was executing that stroke, he believed that ball was in the hole, but he made it. He did everything he possibly could. And that is commandment number 6. And that story, it's just a wonderful story that I kind of got, secondhand, but it's a great story. And if it's a little bit embellished, a little bit, untrue, from, the way stories go through the years, it still is a great lesson point. Now we go on to number 7, and number 7, came to me from Arnold Palmer. And he was talking to me about making solid contact. We talked about that, in our first, session, starting these 3 sessions. And, that whole notion about hitting the ball solid. When you step up into short putts, most short putts are missed because of apprehension, anxiety, nervousness. But if you step in there and you actually make center of contact, a pure percussion point on your putter with the center of gravity on the ball, okay, center of mass to center of mass, and hitting it solid, you are ensuring a solid strike. And that solid strike, and that ball is going to be in the hole long before you even, start to worry about it. So if you're going to actually worry about something on a short putt or feel like I have to make, here's what I suggest to people to do. I think you need to worry well. What does that mean? Worrying well means I'm going to worry and I'm going to put my energy, not worrying about the outcome, but I'm going to focus on the process of actually hitting this putt solid, center of mass to center of mass, going down my intended ball roll line. And the more solid you hit the putt, the putt tends to go end over end, hold its line, have good speed, and go in the direction that you want. And that's, commandment number 7. Now, commandment number 8 comes by all of our work, all these years interviewing different people. And it came about with, the great Swedish player, Helen Alfredsson. And Helen Alfredsson was a player that was actually, very emotional, very volatile when she missed putts. And she was actually, yelling a lot of words in Swedish that a lot of people didn't know at the time. They were pretty tough. But I remember talking to Helen, and I asked her one time, she goes, my putting, she goes, I just get so upset, putting, I just hate it, when I miss, it just makes me so angry. And the point being is that, we actually created, sort of this strategy to say, hey, number 8, commandment number 8 is if you putt and miss, by golly, then at least miss with the conviction that you're going to try to make it. I mean, let's not go in what I call sort of soft or dandelion or wussy putting. I mean, going in there with the hit and hope stroke, the timid mouse stroke, the anxious, stroke. Hey, we're going to step in. And if we're going to miss this, we're going to miss it with our guns blazing. We're going to hit the putt. We're going to hit it confidently. We're going to hit it solidly. We're going to hit it with this intended purpose. This is what I'm trying to do. If it misses, at least I missed it with the mindset that I was intending to make it. That right there just gets you through the fear. So we have to feel that fear sometimes. We feel it. We're nervous, but you've got to work through it. And the action plan, the mental action plan is, if I'm going to miss this putt, I'm missing it with the intention of making it. And that way, if you do miss, at least you have the consolation to say, I stepped up to the plate and I went down swinging, right? And that sure makes people feel a lot better about their putting. That's commandment number 8.
Real quick, can I ask just a quick follow-up there? I don't want to throw you off, but it's sort of, I think this sort of ties into 7 and 8 a little bit with the Jack story as well. That, being on tour and I've talked to players and watched them, and it's funny because a lot of them, it does feel like they have this mindset that, hey, Yeah, I missed it, but I mean, it wasn't me. I hit exactly what I wanted to hit. I did everything I wanted to do. So it's hard to get them to say, I missed that putt. I made a bad putt. And I don't know if that's part of the whole process of just, taking, it sort of feels like it's not taking accountability, but it's sort of self-protection mode, saying, I really hit all great putts. And I remember even, hearing a player after a tough day, maybe loses the tournament, doesn't have a great putting day. Some of them will sit there and say, I felt like I hit all good putts. So what is that doing into the mind when the outcome wasn't what it needed to be, but you're still saying, I did everything that I could do. And, I hit great putts.
Well,
I wouldn't change a thing.
there's
Yeah.
two different, strategies we have in sports psychology. One is called an ego enhancing strategy, and one's an ego protecting strategy. I give you a great example. Lee Trevino for years was just talk about a shot. And he, with his caddy, Herman Mitchell, they would go up to a shot. And Lee Trevino, was always talking all the time. But what people didn't really realize with Lee Trevino, when he was talking, he was actually keeping his anxiety or nervous level. He was a way for him to have, composure. He would talk about it. So he would step up into a shot and he would look at Herman. He goes, look at this lie, Herman. He goes, look at this lie. He goes, that ball's sitting down. There's nobody can hit that shot. There's no way anybody can get that shot. And Herman would go, that's right, boss. Nobody can hit that shot. He goes, but I can hit that shot. So that would be an ego enhancing strategy. I might be the only guy out here that hits that shot, right? And then if he hit that shot and it didn't come off right, he goes, well, I told you, Herman, there's no way I could have got that shot. That's an ego protecting strategy, right? So you work for you in both ways, right? So, what I'm trying to help players understand, what you talked about, Jim, is so accurate, is that what's going on here? And I'm always trying to help players recognize and review and do something here with the putt, because there are 4 errors that we make in putting. And I'm going to talk about that. You have mental errors, and a mental error is, I rushed my putt. I didn't really have a good read of the putt. I wasn't ready, but I went ahead and hit it anyway. And I got, the putt going anywhere. So there's mental errors. Okay. Now there's physical errors. Physical errors of execution. I just hit it too hard. I pulled it. I pushed it. I didn't hit it hard enough. I just, sort of let go of it. That's a physical error, and we know that. Then there are emotional errors. An emotional error is an anxiety error. You're just scared, and you don't allow yourself to even hit the putt. You leave a 3-foot putt a foot short, okay, because you're so scared, that you're going to miss it, that you actually create a miss. That's called negative programming. And the final error that we see a lot on tour, and it's probably the one that most amateurs don't recognize they make because they think it's something about their stroke. It's called a sensory error, and they're the hardest to detect. It's when you misjudged a putt. You didn't really see the subtle breaks. You didn't feel it with your feet, or you actually misjudged, the visual aspect of that putt. It was just a misread. And so a lot of times you might have put on a really good stroke, okay, but you just misread it. That's a sensory error. And it's really important, when you review a putt, that you go through this process. What happened right there? And so that right there, if you miss, you've got to go here to commandment number 9, which means, you must pull something positive out of every putt. And that's a huge one, to pull something positive out of every putt. And that's what, goes into the review process.
It's hard and seems hard to do every time.
It's a tough mental skill, Ted. That's why I have a job. All right. I help people, who have trouble, who's come to me and goes, what do you mean by that? Sounds hard. Yeah, it is hard. It's difficult. I mean, this whole notion about mental training and getting your mind in the right place, this isn't all, unicorns and rainbows. I mean, it's tough, diligent work. And that's why people talk about, you've got to be mentally tough. And the point being, and Coach Nick Saban, University of Alabama, great coach, talked about this. He goes, mental toughness is, you've got to face hard times. Hard times create, tough people. Easy times create, soft people. And so that's what we have to do. Missing is a huge aspect of putting. I mean, people will miss putts, but you've got to be able to say, after I missed a putt, what happened? So we go through sort of this movement evaluation process. Did I step into the putt, with a committed purpose? Did I really have a specific line? Did I really see the putt where I wanted it to go? Did I hit it solid? And so when I say you have to pull something positive out of every putt, you got to ask yourself, did I actually adhere to my routine? Did I really commit 100% to that putt? Did I give it a great effort? And, I missed it, but, what was the miss? Was it physical error, mental error, emotional error? Did I read it correctly? And if you just hit a bad putt and, and nothing else, I just hit a bad putt, you go, oh, I hit a bad putt. And then you have to be like the Lion King, Hakuna Matata, put the past behind you, and you've got to move forward. And that's really what acceptance is. Acceptance is the final part of any putt. You have to accept, did it go in or did it, miss? And if it missed, okay, why did it miss? But we have to pull something positive out of my effort. Did I hit it solid? Did I, adhere to my routine? Was I committed? Because if you're, just getting negative and going, I missed another damn putt, nothing good, nothing positive comes out of negative self-talk or negative thought. Nothing. Because we have to, prepare ourselves to hit the next putt, right? So we have to be able to accept this, put closure on it, put it behind us and say, you know what? This next putt is the putt that gets me going, right? And that's really, why number 9 is huge, which leads us, right into number 10. And number 10 is this: great putters do indeed 3-putt. Great putters miss putts, but they miss putts while trying to make them. And I've always remembered the story about Seve, 4-putting number 16 at the Masters at Augusta. And they asked him, how he started off 6 feet and he 4-putted. He goes, the first putt, I miss. The second putt, I miss. The third one, I miss. The fourth one, go in the hole. And everybody was laughing. And he goes, why are you laughing? He goes, I tried on every one. He goes, I was, focused on every one. But that just showed me the great Seve Ballesteros missed putts. I mean, I listened to Freddie Couples and Brandt Snedeker being at the Masters talking about 4-putting, 5-putting. Welcome to the party, pal. I mean, it's tough. So the point of it is, with putting, he goes, it's a skill, it's an art, it's a science. But as I said, in session number 1, it is mostly about your human disposition to choose, to select. This is how I want to think. This is how I want to feel. This is how I want to perform. And the moment that you change your mind about your putting, you change your putting game. That's my trademark. Change your mind, change your game. And what that means is the moment you change your mind about the things you're thinking about in your putting and you change them in a positive way, the things that you really wanted to change, you start to change and you start to make putts. And those are the 10 commandments of mind power putting.
That is absolutely awesome.
Very good.
I know I shouldn't do this, but for some reason I feel like I want to have the last word on this.
It is your show, Jim.
You hear miss and forget, and what I'm hearing from you is no, you don't want to miss and forget. You want to miss and move forward. You want to miss and move forward. You want to take something positive forward. And, you're the one that just mentioned the 4-putt, the 5-putt. I'm going to talk about a 6-putt that Ernie Els had on the very first hole at Augusta. Okay. Yeah. And I think we remember that because it was talked about, it was written about. Can he ever putt again? Will he ever be able to play again? Is this going to be the end of his career? And Ernie Els, 1 week later, went to Hilton Head to play at Harbour Town. 1 week later. And one thing he did is he switched putters to a Seymour putter. He was not using a Seymour putter at the Augusta, but he switched to a Seymour putter that he'd had with him and had been thinking about putting in play. Something happened by putting that Seymour putter in play. We talk about the fact that it does have some indicators on it, and maybe those indicators helped him miss and move forward. But that weekend at Harbour Town, he gained over 10 strokes gained putting, which I have done the research, cannot find another weekend where any tour player gained 10 strokes gained putting in a 2-day period. That was 1 week after 6-putting the very first hole and having the world basically write him off as somebody that would be ruined. So my takeaway is that he was able to take that and somehow move forward and become the great putter that he's obviously always been and knew he was capable of. And he actually went to a level that no player had ever been at over the weekend, gaining 10 strokes gained putting on the putting green.
Well, Jim, that's really what we consider failing forward. Because, when you finally realize, how do I become successful? You realize that failing doesn't really do anything to you unless you choose to make it work against you. So if you can fail forward, learn from it, that's when you become really successful. And that's why when we talk about Seymour, you keep it simple and specific, and you keep it super, and you keep it a Seymour. And that's exactly what Ernie Els did. It was simple for him. And I said, there's nothing more simple than putting a ball into the cup and then pulling it out of the cup. That's a pretty simple maneuver. And I'll tell you what, if you get yourself a Seymour putter, you'll find yourself doing that a lot more.
You've been either listening or watching The Putting Couch, the video podcast brought to you by Seymour Putter Company's tour team. This concludes a 3-part series with Dr. Bob Winters. I think one of the greatest, really most invigorating 3 program series that I've ever been a part of. Doc, we can't wait to have you back, and there's so much out there, for golfers. And we're going to all try to get the word out how much fun it can be to just think about putting and making putts. Thanks so much, Dr. Bob Winters. We'll have you again soon.
Take care. Thank you.
We appreciate you joining us. If you haven't subscribed to the show, make sure you do wherever you're listening. Be sure to leave a rating and review because that's how we get the Putting Couch podcast content in front of more people. Also, take a screenshot and share it on social media and tag us at Seymour Putters or #Team Seymour.